Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again. Believe in a power greater than what you are going through. When you don't know what to do, keep breathing.
That's right. When you don't know what to do, just keep on breathing. From the city of Angels in Los Angeles, welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver at caregiverdave.com, along with my lovely co-host, best-selling author, and former mayor of Grover Beach in Central California, Debbie Peterson. Also coming to you live and on demand 24/7 on numerous syndicated radio and podcast networks on 30 global audio and video platforms. In fact, we are proud to be voted #1 caregiver podcast on FeedSpot out of thousands, and #1 on Player FM, the top 50. And we have an especially exciting show planned for you today. If you are feeling burned out, Celeste Sowder explores the life-changing power of self-compassion for caregivers. Join her today as she shares how prioritizing her own well-being allowed her to show up fully for her family and community. She's the founder of the Soul Sister Project and author of the upcoming memoir, I Am Here, but I Am Late. But before we get started, I want to take this moment and thank my last week's guest, Ron Schonbaum, regularly noted the power and importance of love for the human psyche. Just a reminder, you can watch or listen to that interview and all our interviews, including this one, on our membership website, caregiverdave.com, or any of our other 30 platforms I mentioned. All right, enough of that. Celeste, so great to have you on the Caregiver Dave Show.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we're super excited to have you here. And I always like to ask my guests just who is Celeste Sowder and why was she placed on this earth?
Honestly, I didn't really, I wouldn't have had an answer for you even 2 years ago on that one. But a lot's changed since then. And I feel like I've been introduced myself finally, after, having some setbacks that became breakthroughs, right? Some breakdowns that became breakthroughs. And I would definitely have to say that, I'm here. I'm here to make an impact. I am here, but I might be a little late. I don't think I really am, but I'm a little later to the show than most. And my story is meant to change some lives, and it might not change everybody's life, but it is meant to change some. So I'm super, I'm in awe with what's happening in my life right now, and I'm here for change. Yeah.
All in all. Yeah, that's like, Debbie, you got a question?
Yeah, I love it that you say now you got to know who you are yourself. That's fascinating. And so now you've got me on tenterhooks wondering, okay, so what is it? What happened? How did you get there?
Yeah. So, I went through a 6-month-long psychosis that I didn't even know I was in, when I was 40. So, just a little backstory. I just had, the gastric sleeve. I was riddled with all kinds of, chronic diseases. I'm like, what is the word? Chronic diseases. I was riddled with it. And, I decided to go into that surgery, and I lost 100 pounds in 5 months. And all of a sudden I found myself like this person that I didn't know who I was, but I didn't realize I was actually in a psychosis at the time, from thyroid issues. And so I had, from like the hormonal thing. I was standing in my kitchen at the end of this psychosis, and I had just received a new diagnosis, a blood test that showed like my pituitary gland was like offline, and this new diagnosis of ADHD. And it was the answer to the question that I'd always asked myself, right? Like, what the heck is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Why do I do the things I do? And it was the answer I needed to show the self-compassion to myself. Like, I quit shaming myself, and I started looking at the things and the things that made me that I kept trying not to be. And it's given me an opportunity to really get to know myself. It really has. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I look at ADHD as a blessing because you will. I'm also got an official diagnosis of ADHD, And my son does too. And so what it does for me is it allows me to do things that other people can't do. And there's a huge need in the world for people who can do what people with ADHD do, because we're the only ones who can.
That's right. That's right.
I just see it as a different thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
Are you on medication for it or no?
I am. Yep. I was medicated and it changed my life.
Really?
It really did. I was able to finally start putting two and two together, because with that diagnosis came executive function disorder diagnosis too. So I always wondered, I was so entrepreneurial and I always, gung ho, let's do this. And then I would get to that point where I didn't have the answer and I would quit. And it was because I couldn't, there was like the steps, right? You see the big picture, but it's the implementation steps that I was having issues with. And I'm not going to say it's like perfect now with the medication, but between medication and technology that we have available, it's become a very real thing for me. Like that, it's changed my life.
Wow. I wonder if Trump is ADHD. This guy never sleeps.
And he could be medicated because I don't need as much sleep as I used to. So I don't know.
He medicates with McDonald's Big Macs.
That's funny.
All right. So obviously self-care is very, very important. Can you give us some examples? Because some people, I don't have time to care for myself. My siblings don't help. I mean, I'm in caregiver prison with no possibility of parole. Anything that you can counter with that attitude?
Yeah, it's not all about taking time. It's not all about taking a bath. It's about processing the trigger that's happening in the moment. You might be triggered right in the moment by doing the caregiving, by a sibling or a spouse or whoever not seeing that you need a moment, right? Or something like that. It's not always about the bubble bath and the candles. It's about literally taking a breath and not reacting to the trigger. And that's what I've recognized. I can self-care all day, every day, right? But it still doesn't make me feel better. I don't get up in a different mood. I don't feel like I've done the work by drawing myself a bubble bath. But when I do give myself that chance to just take a breath, and I feel that shame trigger come on me, and I take a breath and I'm like, why is this triggering me? If I can just, and I don't have to have the root. It's just that I know I'm being triggered and I know that the answer will come. I don't have to ruminate and stay in that feeling. That has done amazing things in my life, because it's allowed me not to only love myself, but I've learned to love others from a place that's unoffendable.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that answered.
That's a good answer. Debbie, you got another one?
So then that kind of goes into obligation versus compassion. So how do you actually do that switch? How do you turn that switch, that trigger off from obligation to compassion?
That takes work, doesn't it? It takes a lot of work. And there are times that I still like huff and puff and come from that place of obligation. And man, I don't want to be that person to the people that I care about most in this world. And I was like that for a very long time, very, very long time. I came on this show not really understanding, and we talked months ago about this, right? I came on this show not understanding the position, even like with my dad. My dad passed away 15 years ago, and he was very sick for a very long time. He told me he was dying when I was 15, and he passed away at 20 when I was 28. He was 55, and I had already been preparing for him to die for a very long time before that, actually. He was a homosexual in the 90s. And when he came out about that, I was 9, almost 10. And that's where my brain automatically went, because that's the only thing I knew. It was that he was going to, get AIDS and he was going to die, because that was in 1992. That's all we talked about. And so, I'd already prepared for it. But at 15, when he was like, I'm dying, and I was like, oh, he's got it. it was hepatitis C. He had hepatitis C at that time. And he was very sick for a very long time in high school and things like that. And then I went straight from that kind of caregiver obligation, and I was so bitter. I was so bitter towards him, into this mothering role. So I had a child at 21, one at 24, farmer's wife. And so I just switched like roles into this caregiver, and it was all out of obligation. And I even mothered out of that because I didn't know any better. They're 18 and 21 now. And I get to do it differently. And the switch happens just by recognizing it's not one and done. And two, that shame, we were never meant to carry shame. If you look back at what we were created for, if you believe these things, shame came after. Shame didn't come when we were created. It came after separation. And so when I recognized that, it was like, I can separate myself from shame, and I don't have to, and it can stop with me. It can stop with me, and I can help my children break the cycle too. They don't ever have to parent out of a shame-based position.
My pastor just preached in his sermon last Sunday. A lot of people think that God is out there saying, shame on you, but he's basically here to say, shame off you.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So I want to just, can I go
Yes.
right there for just a second?
You can go right there. Yeah.
Okay. So the first question he asks, in our English Bibles is not even close to the question that he asked. If you look at it in the Hebrew, it says in the English, it says, where are you? No. Yes. It says, where are you? And that sounds shameful if you're reading it from a shame's lens, which we are taught that he's a shameful God. He's not. He's full of light and love, and shame is not of him. In Hebrew, he says, what condition are you in? And my heart breaks every time I say it, because his heart was breaking. He knew that the separation had happened. They were hiding from him. And what condition are you in? And I'm just like, oh, anyways.
Obviously talking about Adam and Eve after they disobeyed. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So boundaries are important for caregivers because boundaries are important for everybody. I mean, there isn't a set of rules for caregivers. There's a set of rules for people. And since caregivers are people, I mean, you just have to keep doing what you were supposed to do before you were a caregiver. Well, let's talk about boundaries and how that can destroy a caregiver, or it can destroy a nurse.
It can. And, it's amazing to me standing on the other side of this healing journey that I'm I'm walking through it. The lack of boundaries of the person I was before to the person I am today is astronomical, but it's the offense people take when you put the boundaries up that are needed to protect yourself that is absolutely asinine to me, but it makes sense of the person I was before. I was so wrapped up in trying to receive love, worthiness, and all this stuff. And then now I'm like, I am loved. I am worthy, right? There's a difference. And so the boundaries that are placed in that trigger people. And so that goes hand in hand with actually responding and not reacting in these situations that, as far as like caregivers, and I've been there as a mother, as a daughter, as a wife, right? My mother-in-law went through a really scary, like, health scare last year. My husband became a caregiver 24/7 for a while there too. And emotions are high. Emotions are high. People are exhausted. You get tired, and then you feel like it's all about them. It's not about me. And it's like, it goes hand in hand with what we just talked about with the obligation versus compassion versus like shame, right? It goes hand in hand with that. And when you put those boundaries up, you have to come from a place of response, love, worthiness, and not reaction, reactive shame, because it can be a shame-based behavioral modification too on the other person's part. So anyways, there's a lot of like psyche stuff going on there.
So what about going back now to, you've been talking a lot about your history, but is there something you wish you'd known about caregiving when you were younger?
He wouldn't have chosen that himself. My dad. He wouldn't have chosen that position himself. But I was so wrapped up in my own stuff, and that I couldn't see him as human. He was a burden. And I don't know who he would be today. I do believe that if he had been met with love, I think that he could have held on long enough for that cure. I think he would have taken care of himself and not allowed, diabetes to take root. I do believe my dad would still be here if he had been received with love. And so, yeah, I would totally go back, but we can't, right? I will say that relationship, and then it will be talked about. It is being talked about in my book. God has a way of redeeming those things, even post-mortem. And I see my dad differently than I did at 15, at 20, at 28. And yeah, but I wish I could go back and love him where he was at.
Kudos to you, because you'd be surprised how many stories I hear about abusive parents or abusive dad or abusive mother who allowed the abusive dad to do what he did, and then they get sick, and then the son or the daughter actually become their caregiver.
Yeah,
it proves that they don't want to be. They're still angry with that person, but there's something that makes them do it. Or when a divorce happens, and then an ex-spouse, you'd be surprised how many ex-spouses are caring for their ex-spouse. What causes somebody who really has a dislike, or maybe doesn't even love anymore, do it?
Oh, you really want me to go there? I feel
I do. Because it's so common. It's more common than you think.
It's common. And
it was common, or?
Yeah, I can see it. I've seen it in relationships with I've seen it.
We have a great example. So I'm not gonna miss this opportunity to ask you if you know. Maybe you don't know.
Well, it's all about them and not about the person that needs the caretaking. It's all about the caregiver and stroking their own ego. I'm just going to put it out there. It is all about making sure that that you're still good and that this person is still bad, right? It's like, and it's so not good for anybody in that situation whatsoever. You're not stroking your ego. That is pride. And it comes before a fall. You will make a butt of yourself. And then on top of that other person doesn't get to, if they're like headed to, end of life, they don't even get the dignity to be loved through the end of life. It is, they are being cared for like with obligation. And so yeah, I went there.
What about the thief on the cross? I mean, maybe there's an opportunity. I think of Joyce Meyer, her father sexually abused her, raped her most of her teenage years, and yet God was telling her, you got to do this. And she said, I don't know how I did it, but in the end she led him to the Lord. And I don't know if I could do it.
I can totally see that if they're getting like with Joyce, she's like, okay, I hear.
There had to be repentance on his part, of course. Yes. But if they're just being honorary right up to the end, I don't know.
Yeah. And that would be hard, but she was hearing God in that too, is that, she was pursuing the Lord. There are times that he puts us in these positions. It doesn't have to be just caregiver, but he puts us in these positions that we love people that we're like, I don't know how I'm going to love them. This is what I've come to realize. See, we had this like blanket unconditional love, like, okay, well, I'm a believer or whatever, and I have to love everybody, and this unconditional love. And it's not like that, actually. Unconditional love is literally without the condition you're putting on that person at that time. I don't have to unconditionally love anybody outside of this room. There's nobody in this room other than me right now. I don't have to love, like actively love somebody right now. See, love is a verb to me. You know, my dog's sitting here and I'm actively loving him right now, but my husband's outside this door, right? It's that unconditional love literally comes when your flesh, your body, your mind, whatever, wants to put a condition on them receiving love from you. And that's what we're called to do, is not to do that. Right. And so I can see in these really hard situations where these caregivers are put in these really hard situations and they know that they're supposed to be there. That is what comes. That's what rises up in you, or what you're learning, because we're all learning something, is love without the condition your mind, your flesh, whatever you want to call it, is putting on in that moment.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And, you know, the Bible says to whom much is given, much is required. And I mean, she had to buy them a house. She had to put them in a nursing home, pay for the nursing home, you know, all that stuff with, you know, that's tough. I mean, my own mother-in-law she never liked me. Wasn't nice to me, but I bought her a house too, you know, and we did all that, but I didn't want to. But kudos to you anyway, because I know it's not easy, and a lot of people just don't do it. At least you did it.
You know,
So you guys are kind of doing some storytelling. Is that the way storytelling and connecting with other caregivers kind of helps in the healing process?
Helps them relate, I think.
I would absolutely say so. Yes. And storytelling is, it's universal. Like that's how we connect, right? In such a technology filled world, even social media. And that's what I do. I teach social media. I'm on social media. I connect on social media.
Like a parable.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
It's the storytelling that connects us, right? In the AI era, it's the storytelling, it's the human connection that, yeah, it's storytelling all the way.
Well, I know we spent a lot of time on that, but I think that's important because I don't think that topic has ever come up on all of our 10 years of podcasts. You know, we've touched on it, but thank you so much for being vulnerable. And what last question, what advice would you give to caregivers if you could tell them one thing, because you know they don't listen anyway, but if you can listen to one thing and then tell us about your book, if you have a book, and how we can get a hold of you.
Awesome. Yeah. The one thing they need to hear,
Mm-hmm.
talk about it, because shame, I talked about shame here. Shame hides in the dark. It festers, it hides. It doesn't, like, find somebody you can be honest with. Those thoughts that keep you bound in that obligation, that frustration, that reactiveness, they don't have to be a part of you.
No.
They don't have to be. And so, yeah.
Thank you. How can people get a hold of you? And you have a book, right?
I do. I have a book coming out this year. It's called I'm Here, But I'm Late. And it's how I lost the white-knuckled grip of my sanity and found redemption. And yeah, so it's coming out in July. It does have my dad in it, and there's a lot.
Are you doing pre-purchases or not yet?
Yet, and that will be coming soon. Yes. Okay. And so yeah, we're in the editing phase, and it's been an amazing journey for me.
And what's your your contact?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram, and just under Celeste Sowder, and then the soulsisterproject.com.
And Celeste has an E after it. Thank you again. I can't believe how fast this time's gone. Eddie, how do people get a hold of you and find out the amazing political things that you are doing and you're battling corruption on all levels? Go ahead.
Well, first, thank you, Celeste, for being a light in the darkness. For folks who want to be a light in the darkness where they find political corruption, you can go to Corruption Chronicles. Just Google Corruption Chronicles Debbie Peterson. And I have lots of stories of how people found it and how they fixed it, how they did it together, and how you do it with love.
Great. Remember that all our live shows become recorded pod and video casts. on all your favorite platforms. And my number one best-selling book, Your Life Too, How to Survive and Thrive as a Caregiver, is available wherever books are sold and also on caregiverdave.com, where you can also schedule a free 30-minute initial coaching call. Talk about whatever you're struggling with. And you can also join my community of 34,000 caregivers on Facebook at Caregiver Dave. And we have lots of tools, resources, videos, this radio show, and much, much more. And if you click the like or follow button on whatever platform you're watching right now, it helps us reach even more caregivers, thanks to Google. Again, a big thank you to all my listeners and my co-hosts and my guests. Thank you so much. And my listeners all over the world for tuning in every Wednesday and making us the number one caregiver podcast on the internet. So until next week, same time, same channel, may God richly bless you all. Bye-bye. Thanks, guys.
I'm Dave Nasani. My fourth book, Secrets from the Hammock, Uncommon Wisdom for Uncommon Times, is a number one bestseller on Amazon. As a young boy, I was told that I possessed an unusual amount of wisdom for my age. As a teenager, I found myself counseling friends and family whenever they needed answers to their problems. Then at 21, I read the Bible for the very first time and learned how King Solomon asked God for wisdom instead of riches, yet he received both. I was so impressed that I too asked God for wisdom. Soon after, I discovered when lying on my hammock, I would receive wisdom from God. This book is a result of my passion to share with the world wisdom's tremendous benefits. Join me as I reveal practical aspects of wisdom for the mind, body, and spirit. 31 lessons I learned from God that can change your life. Available in Kindle, Audible, paperback, and hardcover, wherever books are sold. I've spoken all over the country and London, and am available to speak at your event. Contact me at hammockwisdom.com.
Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing.